Welcome back. This is Chicken Philosophy, Teilhard de Chardin, Part 7, in which we'll continue reading The Divine Milieu by Pierre Teilhard de Chardin. Happy to announce that this arrived recently, the activation of energy by Pierre Teilhard de Chardin. So we'll put that in the queue somewhere to be read later on. All right. Hope everyone's doing well. And we're adding a new book to the mix. Stay tuned. It'll be up next. All right. 5. This thing. The Christian perfection of human endeavor. There was reason to fear, as we have said, that the introduction of Christian perspectives might seriously upset the ordering of human action, that the seeking after and waiting for the kingdom of heaven might deflect human activity from its natural tasks. Or at least, have you seen or heard Dan Carlin's Hardcore History? I don't know what episode number it was, but Prophets of Doom. There's an example of waiting for the kingdom of heaven interfering with the natural flow of human activity. I highly recommend it. Unfortunately, it isn't free. You have to go to his website, and I think it was a little controversial, so he doesn't put it up there with the Genghis Khan series under the free stuff. Okay, sorry. The human activity from its natural tasks, or at least entirely eclipse any interest in them. Now we see why this cannot and must not be so. The knitting together of God and the world has just taken place under our eyes in the domain of action. No, God does not deflect our gaze permanently from the work he himself has given us, since he presents himself to us as attainable through that very work. Nor does he blot out, in his intense light, the detail of our earthly aims, since the closeness of our union with him is in fact determined by the exact fulfillment of the least of our tasks. We ought to accustom ourselves to this basic truth till we are steeped in it. By the way, if you'd like to start at the beginning of this book, instead of jumping in the middle, you can click there for the Teilhard de Chardin playlist. Okay, I should have done that earlier. All right. Now, where was I? This commerce is continuous because, wait a minute. Nope. Okie dokie. Yes. There is a sense in which he is at the top of my pen, my spade, my brush, my needle, of my heart and my thought. Remember Mother Teresa saying, I am a pencil in the hand of God. By pressing the stroke, the line, or the stitch on which I am engaged to its ultimate natural finish, I shall lay hold of that last end toward which my innermost will tends, like those formidable physical forces which man contrives to discipline so as to make them perform operations of prodigious delicacy. So the tremendous power of the divine attraction is focused on our frail desires and microscopic intents without breaking their point. It suranimates That's an interesting word. SUR-animates. Must be one of those French words that was hard to put directly into English. Hence, it neither disturbs anything nor stifles anything. It sur-animates, hence it introduces a higher principle of unity into our spiritual life, the specific effect of which is, depending upon the point of view one adopts, either to make man's endeavor holy, or to give the Christian life the full flavor of humanity. Well, as long as they've taken a bath, I suppose that's not too bad. The sanctificate next section, we've gone from 5 to A. So maybe this is 5A. Now there's going to be 5A, 5B, 5C. I can assume. A. The sanctification of human endeavor. I do not think I am exaggerating when I say that 9 out of 10 practicing Christians feel that man's work is always at the level of a, quote, spiritual encumbrance, end quote. In spite of the practice of right intentions and the day offered every morning to God, the general run of the faithful dimly feel that time spent at the office or the studio, in the fields or in the factory, is time taken away from prayer and adoration. It is impossible not to work that is taken for granted. Okay. Then it is impossible, too, to aim at the deep religious life reserved for those who have the leisure to pray or preach all day long. A few moments of the day can be salvaged for God, yes, but the best hours are absorbed, or at any rate cheapened, by natural cares. Under the sway of this feeling, large numbers of Catholics lead a double or crippled life. It was a different time, back when it was still okay to say crippled. Okay, in practice, and it's figurative here, which maybe is worse. Okay, they have to step out of their human dress so as to have faith in themselves as Christians, and inferior Christians at that. What has been said above of the divine extensions and God-given demands of the mystical or universal Christ should be enough to demonstrate both the emptiness of these impressions and the validity of the thesis, parentheses, so dear to Christianity, and parentheses, of sanctification through fulfilling the duties of our station. There are, of course, certain noble and cherished moments of the day, those when we pray or receive the sacraments. Were it not for these moments of more efficient or explicit commerce with God, the tide of the divine omnipresence and our perception of it would weaken until all that was best in our human endeavor, without being entirely lost to the world, would be for us emptied of God. But once we have jealously safeguarded our relation to God encountered, if I may dare use the expression, quote, in his pure state, end quote, you can dare. Transubstantiation is... Never mind. Parentheses, that is to say, in a state of being distinct from all the constituents of the world, end parentheses, there is no need to fear that the most trivial or the most absorbing of occupations should force us to depart from him. To repeat, by virtue of the Christian and still more of the incarnation, nothing here below is profane for those who know how to see. On the contrary, everything is sacred to men who can distinguish that portion of chosen being, which is subject to Christ's drawing power in the process of consummation. Try, with God's help, to perceive the connection, even physical and natural, which binds your labor with the building of the kingdom of heaven. Try to realize that heaven itself smiles upon you, and through your works draws you to itself. Then, as you leave church for the noisy streets, you will remain with only one feeling, that of continuing to immerse yourself in God. If your work is dull or exhausting, take refuge in the inexhaustible and becalming interest of progressing in the divine life. If your work enthralls you, there you go, then allow the spiritual impulse which matter communicates to you to enter into your taste for God, whom you know better and desire more under the veil of his works. Never at any time, quote, whether eating or drinking, end quote, consent to do anything without first of all realizing its significance and constructive value in Christo Jesu, excuse me. All right, it was italics, so it's, never mind. Okay. And pursuing it with all your might, full stop. Okay. This is not simply a commonplace precept for salvation. It is the very path to sanctify for each man according to his state and calling. For what is sanctity in a creature if not to adhere to God with the maximum of his strength? And what does that maximum adherence to God mean, if not the fulfillment in the world organized around Christ of the exact function, be it lowly or eminent, to which that creature is destined both by natural endowment and by supernatural gift? Within the church, we observe all sorts of groups whose members are vowed to the perfect practice of this or that particular value: mercy, detachment, the splendor of the liturgy, the missions, contemplation. Why should there not be men vowed to the task of exemplifying, by their lives, the general sanctification of human endeavor? Men whose common religious ideal would be to give a full and conscious explanation of the divine possibilities or demands which any worldly occupation implies. Men, in a word, who would devote themselves in the fields of thought, art, industry, commerce and politics, YouTube. Oh, he didn't say that last part, but I added it. It's updated. Never mind. Etc. was implied in the etc. To carrying out in the sublime spirit these demands, the basic tasks which form the very bonework of human society? Question mark. That was a question. Okay. I should have. Never mind. Around us, the, quote, natural, end quote, progress, which nourishes the sanctity of each new age, is all too often left to the children of the world. Ew. Sorry. That is to say, to agnostics or to the irreligious. Unconsciously or involuntarily, such men collaborate in the kingdom of God and in the fulfillment of the elect. Their efforts, going beyond or correcting their incomplete or bad intentions, are gathered in by him, quote, whose energy subjects all things to itself, end quote. But that is no more than a second best, a temporary phase in the organization of human activity. Right from the hands that knead the dough to those that consecrate it, the great and universal host should be prepared and handled in a spirit of adoration. May the time come when men, having been awakened to a sense of the close bond linking all the movements of this world in the single all-embracing work of the Incarnation, shall be unable to give themselves to any one of their tasks without illuminating it with the clear vision that their work, however elementary it may be, is received and put to good use by a center of the universe, center being with a capital C and an R-E at the end. When that comes to pass, there will be little to separate life in the cloister from the life of the world, and only then will the action of the children of heaven, parentheses, at the same time as the action of the children of the world, end parentheses, have attained the intended plenitude of its humanity. I'm going to pause to contemplate that section we just read, but actually I'm taking a sip of my coffee. So what do you think? I think this was written in a time before all the scandals and things that go on in the church were acknowledged, let alone very, very publicized. Otherwise, that would have to be addressed. It's written within the assumption that the religious people working within the church are doing good. A lot of them may be, perhaps even most of them. Okay, continuing B, so this is 5B. That was 5A. The humanization of Christian endeavor. All right, what was it before? Robotic? Sorry. Only kidding. Godly, obviously. The great objection brought against Christianity in our time. Oh, maybe we're going to get to it. And the real source of distrust, which insinuates entire blocks of humanity from the influence of the church, has nothing to do with historical or theological difficulties. All right, I'm listening. Let's see where he goes with this. It is the suspicion that our religion makes its followers inhuman. Okay, we'll add that to the list. Parentheses, Christianity, end parentheses, so some of the best of the Gentiles are inclined to think. Using Gentiles here, obviously, to refer to non-Christians. Okay. And, okay, quote, the best of Gentiles inclined to think, quote, is bad or inferior because it does not lead its followers to levels of attainment beyond ordinary human powers. Rather, it withdraws them from the ordinary ways of humankind and sets them on other paths. Okay. It isolates them instead of merging them with the mass. Okay. I mean, obviously, different mass than the one that... Okay. Instead of harnessing them to the common talk, it causes them to lose interest in it. Have you heard the common talk? Sorry. Hence, far from raising them to a higher level, it diminishes them and makes them false to their nature. Okay? Moreover, this is him speaking, quoting what he perceives the ungodly to say about the church. Okay. Moreover, don't they admit as much themselves as if one of their religious or one of their priests should happen to devote his life to research in one of the so-called secular disciplines, like Teilhard de Chardin with his science? He is very careful, as a rule, to point out that he is only lending himself for a time to serve a passing whim of scholarly fashion, or even something ultimately of the stuff of illusion. Oh, Maya. Here's a little tiny piece of overlap with Ashtavakra Gita. That's interesting. And that's simply in order to show that Christians are not, after all, the stupidest of men. Oh, right. Okay. Like Christians studying things other than Christianity in order to say, I know about evolution, right? When a Catholic works with us, we invariably get the impression that he is doing so in spite of a condescension. This was pre-Vatican II, so maybe it was a whole different ballgame back then. He appears to be interested, but in fact, because of his religion, he simply does not believe in the human effort as such. His heart is not really with us. Christianity nourishes deserters and false friends. That is what we cannot forgive. End quote. And that was, again, quoting the assumption of what the non-Christian thinks of the Christian. Interesting. I'd say that it's a little different now. I mean, if that was accurate back then, a lot of it would be different now, I would say. But anyway, we have placed this objection, which would be deadly if it were true, in the mouth, there we go, of an unbeliever. But has it no echo here and there within the most faithful souls? What Christian who has become aware of a sheet of glass insulating him from his non-believing colleagues has not asked himself uneasily whether he was not on a false track or had not actually lost touch with the main current of mankind? I mean, I think if a Catholic is going to work in an office with a Muslim and a Jewish person and a Hindu and then an agnostic, and they all kind of like have their different things and they have mutual respect between each other, then that doesn't exist. But if you're the lone Catholic and everyone else there is atheist or agnostic, then yeah, I could see how you might feel like, am I insane? Maybe I'm insane. Without denying that some Christians, by their words more than their deeds, do give grounds for the reproach of being, if not the, quote, enemies, end quote, at least the, quote, strugglers, end quote, of the human race, we can safely assert, after what we said above concerning the supernatural value of our work on earth, that their attitude is due to an incomplete understanding and not at all to some ineradicable flaw in our religion. Okay. I mean, you can go there with anything. And I think that's the no true Scotsman fallacy, but we'll forgive that. One or two fallacies is okay when you're a Jesuit, right? People don't catch it, they convert, right? Sorry. How could we be deserters or skeptical about the future of the tangible world? How could we be repelled by human labor? How little you know us. Who are we talking to or about? Okay. You suspect us of not sharing your concern and your hopes and your excitement as you penetrate the mysteries and conquer the forces of nature. Oh, okay. You were alone in that, though, Mr. Chardin. You were the only Catholic celebrating the advancements of science, as far as I know, in your day. I mean, maybe there were others, but you were the one that was saying it out loud. Okay. Quote, feelings of this kind, end quote, you say, quote, can only be shared by men struggling side by side for existence, whereas you Christians profess to be saved already, end quote. Okay, we're back quoting the unbeliever, or what he assumes they're thinking. Okay, as though for us, as for you, indeed far more than for you, it were not a matter of life and death that the earth should flourish to the utmost of its natural powers. As far as you are concerned, quote, and it is here that you are not yet human enough. What are we... Sorry. You do not go to the limits of your humanity. Right. Okay. End quote. It is simply a matter of the success or failure of a reality which remains vague and precarious even when conceived in the form of some superhumanity. All right. We're the board. Sorry. For us, it is a question in a true sense of achieving the victory of no less than a god. Which one? Just kidding. One thing is infinitely disappointing. I grant you, far too many Christians are insufficiently conscious of the, quote, divine and, quote, responsibilities of their lives and live like other men, giving only half of themselves, never experiencing the spur or the intoxication of advancing God's kingdom in every domain of mankind. But do not blame anything but our weakness. Our faith imposes on us the right and the duty to throw ourselves into the things of the earth, as much as you, and even better than you, parentheses, because of the two of us, I alone am in a position to prolong the perspectives of my endeavor to infinity, in conformity with the requirements of my present intention. End quote. Have you heard? The scientists have recently discovered that maybe the rate of acceleration of the expanding of the universe is steadily slowing down. So the Big Crunch theory is back, baby. Ooh. I like the idea of like a heartbeat. Big bang, big crunch, big bang, big crunch. The big freeze was kind of depressing. I wrote Larry the Librarian thinking that the big freeze and the never mind. It's just interesting because after the 80s, I think sometime in the 90s, it was generally accepted that, oh yeah, that whole Big Bang, Big Crunch theory is completely out now. The universe is expanding and the expanding is accelerating. There's this thing called dark energy and it's all just going to fizzle out, and then the protons are eventually just going to fall apart, and there's going to be supermassive black holes and dead planets until there aren't even that anymore, and then there's going to be nothing, but it's going to be really, 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 really big nothing, and then the end. But don't worry, it won't be for like quintillions of years. So we're still in the very beginnings of the lifespan of the universe. And then just like a week ago, they're like, oops, oh no, our math was a little off. It looks like it's going to slow down and possibly eventually start going backwards, and after all. But they don't know. So that's the cool thing. I mean, that's a cool thing about science, is kind of being in a continuous state of not actually being 100% sure of much of anything. Okay, anyway. I want to dedicate myself body... Where was I? Because of the two of us, I alone am in a position to prolong my perspectives of my endeavor to infinity, in conformity with the requirements of my present intention, end parentheses. I want to dedicate myself, body and soul, to the sacred duty of research. We must tend every barrier, right? Test! We must test every barrier, try every path, plumb every abyss. Ooh, behave. Sorry. Nihil intentum, 3 dots. God wills it. So, who willed that he should have need of it? You are men, you say? Plus et ego, plu et ego. Or it's Latin. Plus et ego. Plus et ego. There can be no doubt of it. At a time, so he's clearly writing this for other people who speak Latin fluently. That's interesting. Okay. At a time when the consciousness of its own powers and possibilities is legitimately awakening in a man. I think Latin was like part of high school. Like everybody was learning Latin, I think, back then still. Or at least, everybody like in France, and probably French is closer to Latin anyway, so throwing in a little Latin here and there when the original was in French probably wasn't too weird. It'd be like throwing in a little bit of ancient Anglo, maybe throwing in Shakespeare. No, well, a little. If you throw in, a thou here and there when you're writing in English, people don't go, huh? What's thou? What's that word? Never mind. Okay. To become its own powers. At a time when the consciousness of its own powers and possibilities is legitimately awakening in a mankind now ready to become adult, one of the first duties of a Christian as an apologist is to show by the logic of his religious views, and still more by the logic of his action, that the incarnate God did not come to diminish in us the glorious responsibility and splendid ambition that is ours. So all you apologists out there, you Catholic apologists, Vatican I Catholic apologists that are watching, he's talking to you. The rest of us, then we can eavesdrop on what he's saying to them. Of fashioning our own self, once again, non minuit, sed sacravit. No, Christianity is not, as it is sometimes pretended and sometimes practiced, an additional burden of observances and obligations to weigh down and increase the already heavy load, or to multiply the already paralyzing ties of our life in society. It is, in fact, a soul of immense power, which bestows significance and beauty and a new lightness on what we are already doing. It is true that it sets us on the road towards unexpected heights, but the slope which leads to these heights is linked so closely with the one we were already climbing naturally that there is nothing so distinctively human in the Christian, parentheses, and this is what remains to be considered, and parentheses, as his detachment. Oh, detachment is a human thing and a Christian thing, and other. I was going to, before closing, just mention, sorry, I got a little bit caught. My robe here is stuck. A little bit of behind the scenes. Yes, the thing that you have to look forward to next time on Chicken Philosophy. We're starting a new book, as I mentioned. Da-da-da. So, for the hardcore Catholics out there that are watching this, sorry. So yeah, we're gonna be, kind of looking into two different aspects of the what could be considered like the Western half of Christianity. There was some debate in my mind about whether to read this next, or this. So this would have tied in more with, obviously, like a more ancient Christianity, and these two would have kind of been an interesting peek into the worlds of Eastern and Western Christianity. But I decided to go with this because I think that it's more relevant to the under-the-hood philosophies going on within the minds and hearts of a lot of the people who, for better or worse, are in power. Oh, the Episcopals are okay. Anyway, in the world, I mean, they're wielding a lot of power these days. So I thought it would be interesting. Plus my own background. My ancestors come from this kind of a philosophy. My grandmother was a huge fan of his. And so, yeah, not from a position necessarily of, let's read this so that we can internalize it and make it, into part of our internal dogma. Neither this. I mean, mostly I'm a fan of Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, but honestly, the more I read, the less of a fan I am. Just being transparent with you about that. Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, as explained by a Zen Scientologist beatnik, who read articles about him in reference to his having kind of predicted the internet, leading to some kind of a Borg utopia. That was the Pierre Teilhard de Chardin I was a fan of. This guy is a little different, but I'm going to keep reading. I'm committed to it. That's how much I love Gordon. And this is how much I love my grandma. I'm willing to read these books. And if you're here, it doesn't matter if you're here. I'm going to do this anyway. This was recommended to me by my friend Alex originally. It's much more religious. These kind of would fall into philosophy, where this is much more like how to be a good Christian. And it's like quotes from various saints in Russian and Greek and Syrian, well, more Russian and Greek, Orthodox, monks and saints and people like that. So eventually we'll get to this. If you're watching and you're interested in my reading this, let me know. And I will, I guess, leave you with that. Cheers. And until next time.